Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. Are we watching in slow motion before our very eyes obstruction of justice at the highest levels of our federal government? Yes, from the President of the United States himself. I think we are. And to lay this out for you, let me just set up the discussion. Now, yesterday on television, James Comer, he's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, he warned the Justice Department not to go forward with indictments against Hunter Biden until after a press conference he has scheduled for Wednesday. He warned that there should be no plea agreements made with Hunter Biden and the Justice Department. Now, this is after nearly 5 years of criminal investigation. You would think that we would want these charges. Let's bring the indictments, for crying out loud. What's taking so long? So why would James Comer, a Republican, actually say, no, hold on, don't move forward, Justice Department, because our hearings are actually raising even more questions and bringing more facts to light about Hunter Biden and possibly the involvement of the brother of the President of the United States, if not the President himself? Well, I think the answer to that question lies in an interview that Joe Biden gave to MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle over the weekend. Here, take a look at Joe Biden, what he had to say specifically about the Hunter Biden investigation.
For example, you're going to be able to get an Amtrak, and instead of going through the tunnel of Baltimore at 30 miles an hour because nothing's been done under the Chesapeake Bay under the Baltimore River, the Baltimore area for 80 years. They're going to be able to go at 100 miles an hour. They're going to see more. They're going to see railroads going from Syracuse to all the way down to New York, upstate New York. Anyway, to the city. But I guess what I'm saying, what I think that we're going to see is movement.
I'm sorry about that. That was a different part of the interview where the president's brain completely malfunctions. You could almost see smoke coming out of his ears there when nothing was working and couldn't quite get the cars on the train all going in the same direction. Did you see Stephanie Ruhle there, by the way, during the interview? This is a hard-nosed journalist, isn't it? She's like acting like what you do when you're sitting with your grandpa and he's trying to tell you a story, but he's not getting the facts right. And you've probably heard the story before for years and years. And you're like, oh, I know, Grandpa, I love you. You're going to get there. Come on, let's bring the story. I'm going to help you out. It's like, good journalism there, Stephanie Ruhle. No, I'm talking about a little bit later in the interview when Ms. Ruhle specifically asked the president about the reality that his son could be charged by the Justice Department. After all, this investigation has been going on for years. Watch this exchange.
Sir, there is something personal that's affecting you. Your son, while there's no ties to you, could be charged by your Department of Justice. How will that impact your presidency?
First of all, my son's done nothing wrong. I trust him. I have faith in him. And it impacts my presidency by making me feel proud of him.
He did the lean forward and the squint, so you know that it was well rehearsed. Quite a question there, by the way, from Stephanie Ruhle. Listen, this is personal. It doesn't really have anything to do with you or the presidency, but I just wanted to know about this. But what you heard from the president right there is tantamount to, if not actual, obstruction of justice. He's sending the message, my son did nothing wrong. Now, you may say to yourself, what's wrong with that? This is a father expressing confidence in the innocence of his son. I mean, what father wouldn't do that, right? Even if you think maybe, I don't know 100% if my kid's innocent, but of course I'm going to stand by him. He's my child. He's my son. And you're right. Every father has the right to do that. Except, of course, if the people who are in charge of the investigation of your son work directly for you. And that's exactly what this situation is. You see, the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, and the Director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, both serve at the pleasure of Joe Biden, the President of the United States. Joe could fire them tomorrow for any reason whatsoever. I don't like the color of your tie today, Merrick Garland. You're gone, and that's okay. No complaints. He doesn't have any recourse. That's what it means to serve at the pleasure of the President. And so when Joe Biden sends the message to these men who work directly for him that Hunter Biden has done nothing wrong after 5 years of a criminal investigation, well, we know what he's saying, don't we? Even if his intention isn't to obstruct justice, the sheer act of doing that is obstruction of justice. Add to the fact that Joe Biden, the President of the United States, is, in fact, the chief law enforcement officer in this country. He is responsible for enforcing the law. He swears an oath to enforce the law, and he has just sent the message to everyone who works in the Justice Department that hands off Hunter Biden. He's done nothing wrong. He leaned forward and squinted and said it after all. So you get the message. It also sends the message that if the Justice Department does bring charges against Hunter Biden, which is likely, considering they're already discussing negotiations with his attorneys, that Joe Biden will just pardon him anyway, right? I mean, if the president is confident that Hunter Biden has done nothing wrong and then the Justice Department brings charges against him, it's just logical that he would pardon him. Why wouldn't you pardon an innocent man? And Joe Biden is confident that Hunter Biden is innocent. Therefore, you see what he's done here, don't you? And of course, the beauty of it is it's happening right before our eyes. A cover-up that is transparent. That's an amazing thing to behold. You have to be a certain kind of corrupt politician to be able to execute this. And then, when the Justice Department decides not to press charges, or if Joe Biden does end up granting some kind of pardon, well, they can just say, well, full transparency. I mean, we had nothing to do with what the Justice Department did, and the president has always maintained his innocence, and, well, you know, there it is. And of course, we've seen this movie before, haven't we? I mean, all we have to do is go back to the weeks right before the presidential election, the final debate, when the Hunter Biden laptop story was all over the, well, no, actually, it wasn't all over the place, was it? No, the New York Times and the Washington Post and the networks and the cable stations, they refused to cover that story. In fact, social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, they actually censored that story and deleted any reference to the Hunter Biden laptop story from the New York Post because they claimed it was Russian disinformation, right? Again, that happened right before our eyes, too. Here was a letter of 51 members of the intelligence community who said that this laptop story has all the earmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. Boy, what a beautiful work of art that propaganda was. Not only did it give all of those media outlets an excuse, a fig leaf to explain why they weren't covering the story, but at the same time, it implicated Donald Trump in another false accusation of Russian collusion. And now we're learning the entire episode was created. That entire letter of 51 former intelligence community members that signed that letter, it was all made so Joe Biden could have a talking point at the debate. And boy, did he use it. Remember? Watch.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is
told.
where he's going.
There you go. And now it's happening all over again. Don't look at that story. My son didn't do anything wrong. I'm confident of that. And if the Justice Department works out some sort of negotiated plea deal where Hunter Biden ends up getting immunity to some of the big charges and he pleads out to some sort of tax charge with a fine that'll be payable by selling a couple of works of art, then all is said and done, we can wash our hands and we can just move on to the next election. And years from now, the New York Times and the Washington Post will say, hey, maybe there was more to that story than we thought. But at that point, it won't matter because, well, the job will already be done. Thankfully, though, you actually get your news somewhere else, and we appreciate it. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight. You're watching the Salem News Channel.